man leaves Africa, evolves in different places, evolves in brain. Here are the gross morphology differences. The notion that the races on average have identical brain function is a joke position. It is a political position. It is an unreal position. It is a position that cannot be stated in a forthright and clear manner without looking ridiculous. That's why egalitarians are so cryptic about what they actually believe and instead focus on critique instead of making out their case for equality.
Okay, let's talk about that. Since they have this larger orbital cortex, wouldn't that mean that their ability is more evolved, as you equate larger with being more evolved, so that their orbital cortex is more evolved than us, which is a part of the prefrontal cortex, which is involved in making decisions. In other words, they should be more evolved at making decisions and making good decisions and having impulse control as a function of their society in greater prevalence than in Europeans. In other words, they should be able to control themselves a lot better. You're the one that came up with this. You and your racist buddies. Larger means better. I know that this is apparently the sitcom bigger is better penis slapping contest kind of thing, but what does this really tell us? And then you move on to the gray matter and the white matter thing. So let's look here at a site. I'm going to link this in the low bar too. It's just a simple site. Everybody can go and look at it. Differences in it's on eHow. Differences in gray and white matter. Let's look at this. Cellular properties of gray matter. It says gray matter is primarily composed of neuronal cell bodies, which are clustered together into specific locations in the brain and spinal cord. All of the gray matter in our other brain forms the cerebral cortex, which performs almost all of the conscious thoughts. There is also gray matter deeper in your brain structures, like the thalamus and the basal ganglia are also gray matter, and they help us to sense the environment and coordinate your movements. Now, according to all of you, the fast twitch muscles are greater in Africans, so shouldn't they have more gray matter then? Moving on, let's talk about the cellular properties of white matter. White matter is primarily composed of the axons and connected to neural cell bodies. It gets its white color because most of these axons are coated in a sheath called myelin. I think that's how it's pronounced. Myelin helps to speed nerve conduction so that messages can travel faster through your brain. White matter also contains supporting cells called glia, which help neurons get nutrition and protect the brain from infection. Okay, so if I see this correctly, in both cases it creates the fast twitch muscle thing that you think is so important in people of African descent and why they're such good athletes. But shouldn't it be more prevalent in whites then, since it's also associated with this structure in the thalamus region, the ganglia, helps to sense the environment and coordinate your movements. So the more that you have of gray matter, the better your coordination for movements are. But they have a deficit in gray matter in Africans, and they have a greater white matter. So they're fast, but they can't coordinate very well. That's what you're trying to say by all this, because that's the only way I can connect it back to anything that's actually worthwhile. And even then, it doesn't seem to actually give us much in the way of information. What are you talking about here, Fringe? What's the difference here? What is going on? Can you explain yourself for once in your miserable little life so that we can understand exactly what it is you're trying to fucking say? Do you know how frustrating it is to hear this bullshit over and over again and never get an explanation for it? Is this in support of that idea of the fast twitch muscle fiber being more important in blacks, or whatever the hell it is you guys are doing this week? Jesus fucking... Alright, let's move on to this whole size thing. I'm going to say this for the 4 billionth time. All human beings, are you listening, Fringe? Every fucking Homo sapien sapien on the goddamn planet falls in between 1,000 cc's and 2,000 cc's. In a bell curve. You know that book that you guys always use as your cludge to hit people over the head with. On the extremes will be 2,000 and 1,000, and most people are going to fall in between. Surely you can understand a bell curve. Now, that also means that in individual populations, you will also see this. In other words, if I take a representative population of Chinese people, you will find those two extremes with most people falling in the middle. It's always going to work out that way. It goes across the board for humans in general. Period. Period. Now, according to you, there are qualitative differences in brain size and IQ. In other words, the larger your brain, the more IQ you have. The problem is here, link in the low bar to the site that I'm getting some of this information from, is that when we look at brain size and IQ, it's all over the goddamn map. Southeast Asians in Vietnam have the smallest head but one of the highest IQs. What sense does that make? Where is the logic in this? It doesn't make any sense. Period. That means also in the populations, these representative populations. Let's look at our Chinese example again. Everybody's going to fall between 1,000 and 2,000, with most people falling in the middle. It means from that 1,000 point on to 2,000, we should see across the board, no matter what, always and forever, just like clockwork, an increase in IQ from that 1,000 to 2,000, with the 2,000 motherfuckers being the smartest people on the planet. We don't see that. More importantly, and I'm going to remind you of this because you don't seem to have gotten why it was so important when it happened. When I convinced you that I was taking Gould's side in that little debate we had, and you, like a good little moron, fell right into the, frankly, not very well laid trap, and I'm still remarkably surprised that it worked, trap that I set for you, you implicitly now have to accept something from that. Morton's findings in the racial hierarchy were Caucasian, Asian, African. If you are saying that Morton was not biased in his results, and in fact his results stand as accurate, you are implicitly accepting that hierarchy, in which case all Europeans should be smarter than Asians and Africans. But your buddies Rushton and Jensen, Levine, Beauchard are all saying that the new hierarchy, which, by the way, these hierarchies that are in play right now also correspond, as you're so fond of pointing out, with self-identified changes in personal perception and race. In other words, in the time that we live in, and whatever the predominant view of race is, that is going to be what informs people who are racially inclined to believe these things. That's what's going to inform their positions and their decisions. Right now the hierarchy is Asian, European, African. That's only because of guys like Jensen and Rushton who are saying this. And it's not even really true, and they don't even believe it themselves, because they, as Libertarian Realist flat out said in the comments section of one of his videos, that doesn't matter. The IQ doesn't matter. Genius is all that matters. And it appears that Europeans have the legitimate claim to having nothing but geniuses. It's a smokescreen that you bullshit artists use to try and convince people that you're not being racist. But the problem is you're being racists. You can't get around that. None of the evidence supports this. None. Absolutely zero. And you continue to cling to this idiotic notion. Why? Why do you continue to do this? Oh, look, I have the same map. Imagine that. Alright, here's the forthright and straightforward manner that we're going to lay this out with. Everyone, ladies and gentlemen, I ask you that you bear with me on this because I'm about to get into information of an incredibly technical nature, and I know that someone like Fringe is going to have everything spelled out for him because he can't understand it any other fucking way. And frankly, I'm about half sauced right now because I have a very bad toothache. I'm getting sick and tired of this bullshit. So, let's talk about this in a forthright and straightforward manner. First of all, humans seem to have evolved from Heidelbergenses, Homo heidelbergensis. Neanderthals also apparently broke off from Homo heidelbergensis. They evolved for many, many thousands of years inside the Horn of Africa, modern-day Ethiopia, the Ivory Coast, those places. Now, in that milieu of evolution, we see a number of things happening. First of all, there was an enormous climate switch during the time that we see modern humans begin to first evolve. There was a desertification that took place in Africa. Link in the low part to becoming human. Try watching it, fringe. I had to watch your 3.5-hour jerk fest of bullshit information. You can watch a couple hour long program of fucking becoming human. Try it for a change. Now, because people were now living on a very taut tensile line, it helped to evolve the brain. But this is a process that had been taking place for thousands of years.